Good morning, darlings. Okay, so this is going to be a long video. I'm not going to lie to you. We're going to go through checking out my history today. It's one of my favourites in the collection. It's one of my favourites ever, actually. And you know how I feel about poetry, so it must be good. So, you should have by now read the poem and done the background contextual detail questions, so you know what's going to be spoken of when we come to that part in the text. Okay, so you should also have listened to it because the poet is still alive, and thankfully we get to hear him say it how he wanted it said. Okay, so quite a lot of the issue with poetry or Shakespeare or stuff like that is that we don't know exactly how the author, the writer, the playwright, the poet wanted these things read aloud, or how they wanted them read. So it's really nice when we can actually hear that and we understand exactly where the inflections are supposed to be, where the emphasis is supposed to be, which parts are supposed to be loud, which parts are supposed to be serious, which parts are supposed to be more jovial. It's really good. So if you haven't done that work, you need to. Okay, you need to do that before you come here. Okay, so let's dive straight in then, yeah? Okay, so let me first change my colour because I can't deal with this much red. So, because it's always red, isn't it, on these PowerPoint things? Let's have purple. Okay, so first of all, we've got dem tell me, what dem want to tell me. Bandage up me eye with me own history, blind me to my own identity. Okay, so let's start with the first rhyming pair first. Dem tell me, it's repetition. So I'm going to write a lot of methods down here, guys. So it's repetition. And notice how I am writing quite small, because my writing is quite small because there is going to be a lot to write here. There are going to be a lot of annotations. So I would highly advise that you do the same thing on your copy. Okay, so we've got dem tell me, what dem want to tell me. Now the repetition here, it's all very well and good saying it's repetition, and that's fine. It's great that we've identified a method used, but it's pointless just doing that. What is it for? Well, the repetition, especially because it's on a couple of lines and then another line that's a bit varied, it might reflect the generations of people who've been subjected to this oppression. Well, what do I mean by that? That's double P. Duh. I can't spell today, guys. Subjected to this oppression. So we all know about slavery, and if we didn't, we should. So if you don't know about it, you should go and look it up. So it wasn't just one generation. It was generation after generation after generation of people who were made to be slaves, forced into slavery, which is never okay at all, ever. But if it was just one line of this, perhaps we wouldn't understand just how often and how long this went for, how many generations this went for, okay? So if we were writing about this, we might then say that the poet uses repetition in the first couple of lines to demonstrate how long this has been going on for. Okay? Great. Marvellous. Make some notes. Right. You can pause this video, guys, by the way. You don't have to try and keep up with me. Right, so there's this other thing in here as well. So my question is usually, why is it dem? Why is it dem, which is he's written this in his accent, which in the English would be them. So why is it them? Why is it not you? You've done this. Why is it them? There's this thing that comedians are really never ever supposed to do, and there's only really Peter Kay who can get away with it. So there's this Peter Kay sketch, and he says, who are these people who come back from holiday in their holiday clothes? You know who you are. You're not supposed to say you at any point in a speech or in a comedy routine or something like that, where it separates the speaker from the audience. You're not supposed to do this thing called othering. Okay, so othering. I'm going to put that in little quotation marks because that's what it's called. It's called othering. It immediately, if you use this sort of language, this othering language, it immediately gets somebody's back up. It immediately makes them defensive. No, I didn't. Wasn't me. I didn't do it. So if the poet had said, you've told me, you've done this, and a reader that he's trying to get through to, somebody like us, we probably wouldn't pay we wouldn't pay any attention. We wouldn't pay the blindest bit of attention because he'd use this othering. And we would immediately be defensive and we wouldn't care. Okay? So it's important then that he's used the word them. So yes, he is using othering, like they did it, but he's not using you. He's not blaming us. He's blaming them. Because nobody today, I hope nobody today, nobody today has a slave. I don't have a slave. You don't have a slave. So we aren't doing this, but the people before us did. So this both represents the time before. So we're going to put the history there. We're going to say that it represents the time before, the history, and that it was other people. Okay. So, and the fact that it's gone on for generations. Them tell me, they tell me what they want to tell me. So this means then that they are selective in what they want him to understand. And the me here is not just him, it's the generations of people who have been subjected to this. He is a symbol, he is symbolic of the generations of people who have been subjected to this awful practice of slavery. Okay? And with that, what they wanted to do was they wanted to achieve compliance. Okay? So I'm just going to put that word there. Compliance. They wanted to achieve compliance. And the best way to do that is to control what it is people learn. Okay, what it is people have access to, what it is people can understand or find out or discover. When dictatorships come into power, one of the first things they do is burn books. We bang on at you guys all the time. Reading is good for you. Reading is good for you. You should be reading. You should be reading 10 minutes at least every day, 20 if possible, half an hour is best. You should be reading. Why do we do that? It's not just because it develops your literacy skills. It's because within the pages of a book, within the covers of a book, is what's called freedom. We can expand our minds because of this freedom that we gain through books. I can read a book. I can read a book about the history of Australia. I can read a book about the history of Brazil. I can read a book about the mechanics of a rocket ship. I could read a book about anything I wanted to by going down to my local library and borrowing one. I don't even have to borrow it. I could sit in the library and read it, you know? I don't even have to borrow it. I could buy the book if I wanted to, because we have the freedom to do so. I can choose to know about anything I want to know about because we have books. Books equal freedom. Books equal knowledge, okay? So let's just put that up here. Actually, books equals freedom. You do have to say it like that. And knowledge. And that is how you spell that word, guys. Please make sure you're spelling it properly. So, in order to then control people, what people in power tend to do is limit what they have access to. So, we've all seen, you must have seen in history, photos of dictatorships burning books because they know that books are dangerous. They're dangerous to people who want to control others. They're dangerous because it allows people to think for themselves. And if you think for yourself, you are more likely to criticize those in power, and you are more likely to revolt against something or rebel against something that you don't like. So in this country, we are quite free to criticize the people who run the government. And no matter who you vote for, all our parties in this country are quite happy to have others criticise them. So at the moment, our Prime Minister is of one party, and the opposition party, their job is to criticise the Prime Minister and his party, to say, you're not doing this well enough, you're not doing that well enough, what about these people, how dare you not think of this, what about this, and they're going to hold them to account, okay? So the fundamental principle of democracy that we have now is that the people in power are open to and welcome criticism. They might not like it, but they know that it's such an inherent value of democracy, and it's absolutely vital for democracy that it has to happen. They might not like hearing it, they might not like being called incompetent, but they realise that that is what happens in a free society, okay? And here, what happened to him is he was told what these people wanted him to know, okay? They were selective in what they wanted to tell him so that they could exercise control and achieve compliance, okay? Right, so if you want to pause the video and make some notes about that and anything I will just waffle on about, that's absolutely fine, please do so. Okay, so bandage up my eye with my own history. So what he's saying here, so this is a metaphor, obviously, because they can't take his own history and bandage up his eye. Now, bandage here has several connotations. Where do we usually see bandages? We usually see them for injury, maybe after a battle or a war or a struggle. Double G for struggle, guys. Okay, so bandage up my eye with my own history. It also implies then that maybe he, this symbolic he, needs fixing or healing or repairing, okay? Or repairing or something like that. I'm running out of room, so I'm not going to write that word down. Which insinuates that the people who are doing this think that there's something wrong with him. Okay, they think that there's something wrong with him, which is why they're taking measures to, quote unquote, fix him. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, blind me to my own identity. So they're covering up. This is another metaphor which tells us that they're covering his own identity, who he is. They're covering up who he is and where he came from. Now, you could think that we were done with this stanza, but we're actually not. So why is this the first thing that we see then? What we're going to talk about the structure now. So let's have a different colour actually. Let's have a different colour. What colour shall we have? We'll have a blue. Why is this the first thing that we are presented with? The first idea that we are presented with is that this has been going on for generations. We're being only told what they want us to be told. We're being oppressed. We're being suppressed, and we are being stopped from learning about our own history. Why is this the first thing that we are told about? Well, it could be because this is the priority. What do I mean by that? This might be his priority that he wants to fix. This could be the most pressing thing on his mind, his symbolic mind of everybody. This is, by the way, guys. This bit might be where they want to know where they came from and how they ended up there, and their own histories and their own information and their own culture and their own heritage and stuff like that. I'm going to just put those two words down here, guys. That's a you, honest. Culture or heritage. Okay? He's not getting to see that because they only tell him what they want to tell him, okay? And this links, he wants to know about his own culture and his own heritage, but he's not being able to find out, he's not able to find that out because they are oppressing him, okay? And this is the first thing we find out because it's so significant. So significant to his life. and it's so significant to his existence. If you don't know where you're from, how do you know who you are or where you're going, right? So these are the first things. So when we're talking about structure, and we'll come back to rhyme scheme in a minute, because you know these words all rhyme. Me, history, identity, these all rhyme, okay? So we'll come back to rhyme scheme in a little bit, and then you'll be able to go back and compare it. We'll come back to rhyme scheme in a bit. But we're talking about the first 5 lines of this poem, the first stanza. And remember, guys, it is a stanza when it's poetry. That's an N. I'm going to rub that out and try again. Stanza. I can't spell today. I don't know what's wrong with me. Stanza. We'll try again. Pen. Am I in blue? Yes. It is a paragraph in an essay. It is a verse in a song. And it is a stanza in a poem. In the first stanza, we are hit with this idea of how horrific his oppression has been, and how many generations it's gone on for, and what they've done to him. Okay, so let's move on then. You can pause the video at any point, guys, and get some notes down. That's absolutely fine. Don't let me stop you. Okay, I mean, I couldn't stop it. You have to stop it. You have to press the button. Do you know what I mean? You have to press the pause button. It's either a space bar or it's the letter K, isn't it? Okay, right. I'm going to assume that you've made notes then, and then we'll move on. Right. So we'll notice then that dem tell me about 1066 and all that. Dem tell me about Dick Whittington and he cats. But to sound le retour, and I can never say that because I don't do French. No, dem never tell me about that. So we've got these rhyming words again, and we've got this one word that doesn't rhyme. This stands out, right? We've got this name here, Toussaint Louverture, and I apologise to anybody who's French or of French descent or who speaks French who is watching this and is greatly offended, and I don't blame you, because I just can't do the French accent. Sorry, it's just, yeah, it was just atrocious. I get it, yeah, sorry. Right, so again, we've got this idea of othering. Dem tell me, okay? So again, this has been going on for generations. So we've got this recurring idea, okay? We've got this recurring idea. Okay? Dem tell me about 1066 and all that. So what happened in 1066? You guys know this. You did your homework. Classwork, research work, you know what I mean. So we're talking about the Battle of Hastings, aren't we, really? Battle of Hastings. And can we please make sure we're spelling Hastings properly? So whose history is this, guys? It's British history. It's European history. Is it his history? Nope. So they're telling him about 1066 and all the history, all the British and European history that comes with it. You know, we're talking about William of Orange, we're talking about Harold and the tapestry and all that stuff. That's what he's been told about. They've told him about Dick Whittington. What was Dick Whittington and his cats? It was a nursery rhyme. It was a nursery rhyme. They're telling him about a nursery rhyme. They're telling him about British and European history, and they're teaching him nursery rhymes instead of his own history. Who do we teach nursery rhymes to? We teach nursery rhymes to children. He is being spoken to and treated like he's a child. Okay? Spoken to and treated like he's a child. Is that respectful? No. Now I want to talk to you about this thing called acquisition of language. There's this thing called acquisition of language. Acquisition of language is when one acquires language, okay? So if you ever notice about the way adults speak to children, it's not necessarily the way that adults speak to other adults. Okay, they might say, "Hi, sweetheart, how are you? Have you had a nice day?" and they might use childish language, sorry guys, and tone of voice perhaps. Okay, so if you think about that, they're talking to him about Dick Whittington and teaching nursery rhymes, perhaps they're not giving him an opportunity to acquire adult language. Perhaps they speak to him as though he were a child. Perhaps they speak to him as though he has no higher brain function. Or perhaps they speak to him this way to ensure he doesn't have higher brain function. Perhaps this is one way of them controlling him. Okay, so there's a word for this, and I'm just going to look up how to spell it properly because I always get this one wrong because I'm an idiot. Hang on a second, 1 second. Bear with. It's on the page that won't separate. Of course it is. Of course it is. See, teachers have to look up stuff as well, you know. Right, I've got it. I've got it. Yeah, so you're looking at, it's, so if they're speaking to him in an infantile way, they are infantilizing him. And I can never say that word. They are infantilizing him. They're treating him like an infant, okay? Which is not good. Let me just put my dictionary back. Ooh. Okay, always have a dictionary, guys. You need one. So, if he is being spoken to like this from a very young age because of these generational things that are going on, do we think he's ever going to progress to being an actualized adult like the people who are doing the oppression to him? Like the people who are oppressing him? No, probably not. So they are purposely using language like this and teaching stuff that we did at primary school to keep his brain small and young and not fully matured and not as inquisitive as an adult and not as free thinking as an adult brain or even a teenage brain. Yeah? So this is when we talk about the generations, about what they were subjected to up here, what they were subjected to, this is what we're talking about. We're not just talking about the fact that they were made to work ridiculously long hours under horrific conditions. We're talking about the fact that their brains could have been changed by how they were spoken to and what they learned and to what extent what they learned was controlled. Okay, so within these few lines then, the fact that we've got Dick Whittington and his cat being taught to this man and the generations before him, the speaker, then this is what we're getting out of this. Remember when we said we had to be literary archaeologists when we were looking at Dickens and we had to brush beneath the surface of the words? It's even more important to do that in a poem than it is to do it in a novel, okay, or a novella, because poetry has a limited amount of space and words to convey these messages. You must look for the connotations of what's on the page, okay? Right, but so we've got Toussaint Louverture. No, them never tell me about that. He's never been told about this person who was so important. And because this doesn't rhyme with dat, cat, and dat, this stands out as something he wants to know. Yep. So, because there is no rhyme, can we please make sure we're spelling rhyme properly as well? Because there's no rhyme for this particular word, it means that he wants this stands out. This is what he wants to know. Okay? Right, so go ahead and you can pause and make some notes about that as well, please, guys, if you want to. Okay, well done. So here we have some rhyme here, but it's not the same as this rhyme. Okay? And we've got here what we call enchantment. Oh, that's an A. There is a button on this pen of mine that every now and then, if I hold it in the wrong place, I click it and it just makes it go all weird. Okay, enchantment or enjambment, it depends on how posh you are. And what this means is that something, I'll rub this out in a minute, I promise. So something, this word here and this word here make up the same sentence. But in a poem, this word here is then moved down to this line here, so that we pay attention to this word, or both. Okay, we'll see this when we do My Last Duchess. But enchantment is a technique to make sure that the reader spends just a little longer on a particular word or phrase or line, because it takes us physically, and Diefenbaker agrees, it takes us physically longer for our eyes to get from here down to here, from here down to here, or etc, etc. Okay, it physically takes longer for our eyes to move. Therefore what we've just read stays in our head longer. It makes us dwell upon the ideas. I'm really sorry about the dog, but he really likes this poem. Honest, he really does. He's not just being a fusspot for no reason. Honest. Right, so Toussaint, a slave with vision, lick back, Napoleon, battalion, and first black republic born, Toussaint de Thorn to the French, Toussaint de Beacon of the Haitian Revolution. Okay, so we've got all these things, and we need to take all these lines individually seriously. We need to dwell on what it is that we're reading. So what did Toussaint do then? Okay, so you guys know about Napoleon because you should have done your contextual details. So you should understand how hard it is to beat back. So beat back or defeat. That's how you spell defeat, guys. It's got nothing to do with the things on the end of your ankles. Excuse me. Beat back Napoleon's battalion. Okay, so if you don't know what a battalion is, you need to go and look it up. Okay, so this man, this Toussaint, was a slave, but he had vision. Okay, so he was a rebel in the eyes of the people who were oppressing him, or he was a freedom fighter for the people who were being oppressed. Okay, so one man's rebel is another man's freedom fighter. I hope that makes sense, because there are two sides to every coin. Okay, you have to see both. In order to make sure your brain works really well, you have to see both sides of an argument. For the people who were the French, he was a rebel. How dare he? And for the people who were oppressed, he was a freedom fighter, and he's going to help us. Okay, so there are two sides to every coin. So for the sake of the speaker here, he was a freedom fighter. He was a slave with vision who beat back Napoleon's battalion, and then the first Black Republic was born. Well, what's a republic? It's a state all by itself, so it's an independent state or a country. Okay? An independent state or a country ruled by themselves. So the United States is a republic because they used to be a colony of the British Empire. They're not anymore. They are a republic. There's quite a few places like that in the world that are a republic. Okay, republic. What was I doing? I was just, yeah, that is a D, honest guys. So, and the first Black Republic. So Black Republic is one term. But because black is on its own line here, this is an important word, okay? These people who had been transposed from their homeland, they'd been moved, they'd been shipped off from various countries in Africa over to the Caribbean and had been made slaves, and now they've got their own country. Good for them, right? We feel as a reader that, yeah, good for them, so they should have their own country. They should never have been treated like that in the first place, because as a modern reader, we abhor slavery because it's just disgusting. It's just disgusting. I don't care who you are. It's just disgusting. There is no way on this planet we can justify anything like that. We can't. It's just not okay. Not okay at all. So the first Black Republic born. So these people ruled themselves, yeah? Ruled or governed themselves. And can we make sure we're spelling governed properly? And governed, government, govern, and then M-E-N-T, okay? Governed themselves. And can we make sure we're spelling themselves properly, please? There is no F in themselves. Okay, he was a thorn to the French. He was a thorn. Have you heard the phrase "thorn in the side"? It means constant problem. And he was a beacon of the Haitian Revolution. What's a beacon? A beacon is a bright light. Okay, so this is a metaphor for the hope that he offered the people of Haiti for the revolution. Okay, so the French would call it a rebellion, the freedom fighters would call it a revolution, and that's how we know which side this speaker is on, because it's a revolution. It's not a rebellion, it's a revolution, because they want their freedom, quite rightly. Okay, because don't forget, guys, the British weren't the only people who had an empire. The French did it, the Dutch did it, you know, everybody in Western Europe excuse me, had an empire at some point or another, or tried to. Okay, so it's not just the British, the French were at it as well. Okay, right, so every single line then here, when we're talking about structure, then we're going to talk about the enchantment. I'm just going to change the colour of my pen. We're going to talk about the enchantment and the links to the structure. Every line is important. Every piece of information here is important, and we need to pay attention to it, and that's why it's separated out on every single line. Okay, so go ahead and pause and make some notes if you'd like to. No, not if you'd like to. Go ahead and pause and make some notes. You need these notes, guys, not whether you'd like to or not. Just get on and do them. Okay, fantastic. Well done. I'm going to assume that you've done that. Okay. Excuse me, my throat is really dry today. Ooh, I've dropped my pen. This is never good. Okay, right. So then we go on to another rhyming stanza. And these kind of sound like nursery rhymes themselves, because if you notice when he reads out the poem, if you've done your other work, he's very serious when he reads out this stanza. But when he reads out this stanza and this stanza, he almost sings it like a nursery rhyme, because that's how serious he takes it. Yeah, all the European, British, white history that he's not interested in, because it's not relevant to him. You know, it's as relevant to him as anything to do with football is to me. I couldn't care less about football, and he couldn't care less about European history either. He's not bothered, because it's nothing to do with him. He's just not interested. It's not his life. It's not his love, his passion. It's not where he comes from. He's not bothered. He's not interested. Why should he be? It's nothing to do with him. Why should he be interested? There isn't a reason why he should be interested in their history over his own first. Sure, if he wanted to, you know, develop his knowledge after he'd learned about his own history, fine, yeah, let him read all about it. Yeah, if that's what he wanted to do. But the point of the poem is that he shouldn't be forced to do it. Okay? So, let's carry on then. Dem tell me about the man who discovered the balloon and the cow who jumped over the moon. Now, where have we seen that? Now, I will say, guys, that I asked this question 4 years ago, 4 years ago, and one of my pupils, bless her little heart, thought that that had happened for real and that NASA had sent a cow into space. This is not what happened. We're talking about, hey, diddle diddle, the cat and the fiddle, and the cow jumped over the moon. Yeah, this is what we're talking about. This is another nursery rhyme. So this idea of him being spoken to like a child continues into this stanza. The man who discovered the balloon, is he interested? No. Then tell me about the dish that run away with the spoon. So again, we've got this other, you know, this elongated, childish, childlike, child-orientated information that he has been given and limited to, perhaps. And then he says, but them never tell me about Nanny de Maroon. Okay, so although this rhymes with all the other words, the oon sound, we still know that this is important because it's the last line of the stanza. It's the last line of the stanza. It's what we then are going to pay attention to between this and the next stanza. And this is called caesura, where there's a pause between two stanzas like this. Just let me write that. I won't write that word down. I'll put it in the link because I'm not sure I can spell it properly this morning because my head is in the shed. So, We know it's important because it's on the last line. It's important because of where it is, okay? So this is what we're talking about, structure. My writing is going to get worse and worse and worse in this video, I can tell. But they never tell me about Nanny D. Maroon, okay? We don't know about her, but he's never been told about this woman. And he wants to know because this is his history, his culture, okay? So let's carry on then. Nanny, seafar woman. This doesn't mean that she's got great vision, as in she doesn't need glasses. This is a vision for the future, okay? She had hopes and dreams and aspirations, yeah? So of mountain dream, fire woman, struggle, hopeful stream to freedom river. So, excuse me, sorry. So you guys should know what she did. You should have done your classwork. And if you didn't, you need to go and understand what it is this woman does, because these 6 lines here do not do it justice about what she did, okay? Do not, under any circumstances, do it justice about what she did and who she was. Again, we've got these ideas that are separate on each line. And look at the rhyme scheme. Nanny, woman, dream, struggle, stream, river. We've only got these 2 words that really rhyme. So there's no rhyme. No rhyme equals it's more serious. If something rhymes, it's usually, oh, happy and jolly and fine and okay. But for him in this poem, if it rhymes, and it's talking about nursery rhymes, like he's been spoken to and that's what he's been taught, and he treats the British or the European or the French history like a nursery rhyme, theirs is insignificant. Okay, let's go back and let's put that. So British or European history, oh gosh, I pressed that button again, equals as insignificant as the nursery rhymes. Not just the nursery rhymes that he's being told, but it's about that level that he sees their history as like, oh yeah, whatever, okay, it's just something that yeah, it happened, not bothered, don't care. Because how many of us, when we get to my age of 102, can actually remember the nursery rhymes? A lot of adults forget the nursery rhymes unless they have children themselves. And then they go, oh yeah, I remember that. I remember Georgie Porgy. Yeah, I remember that. But they don't take it with them every single day. They take what was important to them with them every single day, and they retain the knowledge in the forefront of their mind that they choose to, that they want to retain because it's important. Whereas he equates British and European history with the importance of a nursery rhyme. He's not fussed at all. He's not bothered. He doesn't care, because why should he, right? But when we don't have a rhyme like this, and we didn't have as much of a rhyme here, this is because it's serious, because it's important, okay? So this is what we need to consider, and you can make sure that your notes from your homework, I keep saying homework, it wasn't homework, it was classwork, from your classwork are included in this stanza. It's why I'm not writing a lot, because you'll be able to fill in the spaces, okay? Right, so let's move on. Dem tell me about Lord Nelson and Waterloo, so you guys should know this because you've done it. But dem never tell me about Shaka the Great Zulu. Okay, so this is a comparison here. So Lord Nelson and Waterloo was, you know about this from your classwork, was again British and European history. And this is his culture and heritage. That he wants to know about, but dem never tell me about Shaka the Great Zulu. Again, we get this idea of they're never ever saying about his history. One, because they probably didn't know about it. They probably cared about his history the way he cares about theirs. So one, they're ignorant to it, and two, it's this idea of control, okay? Control and compliance. They'll never tell me about that. They were never ever going to tell him about Shaka, the great Zulu. They were never going to tell him because one, they don't care. Because if they cared at all and viewed these people as human beings that were equal to them, then they would have had some respect and they wouldn't have treated them like that in the first place. And two, in order to control them, they're not going to allow them to know anything about their history. Otherwise, they're going to, from their perspective, rebel. Okay, so we're seeing this continued idea, this continued theme and motif all the way through. I'm just going to write motif down here for you guys so you know how to spell it. Theme and motif all the way through this poem, okay? Then tell me about Columbus in 1492. So that is relevant to him. Why is it relevant? Because if it wasn't for Columbus and what he did discovering America, perhaps then they wouldn't be on this island now that they're on. You know, he wouldn't be in the Caribbean. He wouldn't be in this position if Columbus hadn't discovered America. You know, if he hadn't gone and sailed the wrong way to India and then stumbled upon this massive land. If it wasn't for him, Columbus, exploring, maybe they wouldn't have been in this position. Okay? But what happened to the Caribs and the Arawaks too? Now here, excuse me, here ordinarily we would have a question mark. We would say that this is a question. What happened to is a question. But here he is not using punctuation. He is writing in his own dialect. Because why shouldn't he? But he's not using British punctuation at all. Is this an act of rebellion? Well, no, because he's free. So is it an act of defiance then? So it's not rebellion, but it might be defiance. He's writing his accent, but he's writing in enough of an English standard for us, the English people, the English reading people, to be able to understand and be held account for what they did. So we're going to be held to account. That is the worst space I've ever done in my entire life. Let's just get rid of that. Sorry, guys. Held to account. What does that mean? That means that we need to think about what happened in previous generations. Essentially, he's not saying you because he doesn't want to use this othering, but he wants us to understand that previous generations did this and he wants to prevent it from happening again. That's why he's using this othering idea. Okay? He's using it to prevent it from happening again. Let's have another colour. Prevent it happening again. That's what he's after. That's why he's not saying you did this. One, it's got to engage us. And two, he needs us to see his perspective and to understand what it is that they went through and to make sure that we pledge that it will never happen again. Because why wouldn't we do that, right? Okay, let's carry on then. Where were we? We were here. Okay. So, but what happened to the Caribs and Caribs and the Arawaks too? I can't speak today. The Caribs and the Arawaks too. He's using enough dialect to make sure that we can be held to account and that we can understand his plight. If you don't know what the word plight is, you need to look it up and to understand his message in the poem. Okay? Right, let's move on then. So you can pause and make some notes if you want, but let's move on. Then tell me about Florence Nightingale and She Lamp. Now, who was Florence Nightingale? We should all know who Florence Nightingale was. I'm sure we did this in maybe year 5, maybe year 4, can't remember. It's a long time ago since I was in year 4, 70 years, yeah. And how Robin Hood used to camp. Now, Robin Hood, there is a question or not about whether he's a myth, whether he was real or whether he was a myth. People can't really decide on this. But if you think about whether or not the person who is speaking, the speaker, knew whether he was a myth or not, they're not even teaching him things that are real, are they? They're teaching him this nursery rhyme stuff and Robin Hood and maybe even the song about Robin Hood. And no, before you ask me, I'm not going to sing it because it's just stopped snowing and we really don't need it to be starting again. And how Robin Hood used to camp. So he's being told stuff that's fiction. Okay, so again, we've got these rhyme schemes here. And then tell me old King Cole was a merry old soul. Again, nursery rhyme. Yeah, nursery rhyme. But them never tell me. So again, we've got this word never, which is important, which are the same ideas as before. So you can write your own notes about that, guys. Mary C. Cole, Mary C. Cole. Okay, if you've done your classwork, I keep saying homework. If you've done your classwork, you should know who Mary C. Cole is. Okay, right. But just in case you didn't, he has again used enchantment to make sure that we pay attention as a reader to who she was. From Jamaica, she travelled far to the Crimean War. So if you don't know what that is, you should go and look it up. She volunteered to go. She volunteered to go. She wasn't drafted. She volunteered to go. And even when the British said no. So you need to think about why the British said no. So if you don't know this, you need to go and research it. She still braved the Russian snow. Now think about it. You live in Jamaica. She lived in Jamaica. What's the weather like? It is hot. It is sunny. It is lovely. Yes, they have the occasional hurricane, but then, you know, it doesn't ever snow. Or does it snow in Jamaica? Maybe, but I think it might be too close to the equator. So imagine then what it's like to go into Russian snow where it is freezing cold. And she volunteered for this. So what kind of woman does that make Mary C. Cole? We are supposed to think about this as readers, yeah? When this is on its own line, that she still braved the Russian snow, we need to think about what kind of woman that makes her. Because she's travelling from Jamaica to Russia, which is a long way round whichever way you go. So I'm not going to draw a map. Well, I might draw a map. Okay, so Jamaica is here, yeah. You've got the Atlantic Ocean here. That's an ocean, guys, those are waves. You've got Britain here, you've got France here, you've got all of Europe here, and then you've got Russia, yeah. Or you've got America and Mexico and South America here. Then you've got the Pacific Ocean, and then you've got to go all the way up to the top to find Russia up there. Whichever way she went, it was essentially halfway around the world. Yeah, and back in the day, no aeroplanes, don't forget. No aeroplanes, that would have been a long boat ride. You're talking weeks, months. You're talking a long time to be at sea, to go and help these soldiers and nurse these soldiers in the war. In a land that is freezing cold and nowhere like where you grew up and where you lived. This is a massive thing for her to do. So we need to understand that he's used this enchantment to reinforce these ideas and give us, the reader, time to think about the importance of what's going on. Okay? And she was a healing star among the wounded, a yellow sunrise to the dying. Okay, now there's loads in here that we'll come back to another time because we actually don't have enough room on this slide to annotate it. But we need to think about what kind of person she was and how the soldiers would have seen her. Okay, and we'll come back to Yellow Sunrise and we'll come back to Healing Star at another point. Okay, right. And then we come on to the last stanza. Dem tell me what dem want to tell me. This is repetition. It's repeated from the beginning. And also it reflects all the generational stuff that we talked about before. And he says, but now I checking out my own history. I carving out my identity. This is a metaphor. He isn't actually taking a chisel and a knife. But he's making a stand, isn't he? He's deciding for himself. He's gained some freedom or independence. And he's making his own future. Okay? Oh, gosh. That is the worst "you" I have ever written, ever. Seriously, that's just tragic. I can write, I promise, guys. It's just this mouse mat. Well, no, actually, do you know what? It's not the mouse mat, it's me. I'm lying. Okay, but now I'm checking out my own history. He is discovering what he wanted to know all along. Okay? How do we think he feels about this? He's going to feel happy about it, which could be why it's in a bit of a rhyme, because he's happy. So we're going to put a question mark there. I'm carving out my identity. It's a metaphor. Okay. Now carving is usually with something sharp, which means that maybe he's hinting about the fact that it might be a bit of a battle, maybe, or that he might have to fight for it. I'm just going to put a question mark there because we can't be sure. But he's up for the battle, isn't he? He's up for this. He is absolutely up for it. So essentially, this is what we're talking about with this. This is an overview of the poem. There are a few more things in here that we can be talking about, which we will come back to at a later date when we go into this. We'll probably do it in class. And there you go. That is the end. The end. So make some notes, guys, and I will see you soon. Stay safe. If you're not sure about anything, you know you can email me. So stay safe, and I will see you soon.